All right, so I've had the past week off of college, and I've been sitting around in my room watching movies, playing video games for the majority of that time. And sometimes you just go and scroll through the games you have installed or the games you own and try to find something that catches your eye that you're interested in at the moment. And I couldn't help but keep coming back to Noita, even when I was in a bad streak of runs and couldn't get them to go very far. Um, it kept catching my eye over and over again, and I kept getting drawn back into it. And I started to wonder why that was. So today I'd like to talk to y'all about the genius of Noita's design when it comes to keeping player engagement high and making an indie game the right way. Alright, first things first. I'll tell you straight up, Noita's an amazing game. It's $20 on Steam, just go buy it and play it. If you've ever in your entire life played a video game and died and said, wow, that was pretty crazy, or wow, that was cool, and just been happy for the crazy experience of how you died, then get Noita. If you've ever played a hardcore game and enjoyed getting better at something, play Noita. It's really cool otherwise, but there is a learning curve to the fact that you need to die to literally everything to understand how it works. And that's not entirely true, but you'll die to a lot of stupid shit. So that being said, just go play the game. I'm here to discuss the design of Noita, and I guarantee watching this video will ruin a lot of really cool experiences that you'll get to have learning and understanding the way the game works and having those conversations with the people that made the game as you play it. So don't rob yourself of those experiences, but otherwise, let's talk about how cool they are. Alright, let's start from the bottom and work our way up. What makes a good video game? Well, obviously, that's a very opinionated topic. It's also something you could write a bajillion videos on, and people have. But more than anything else, I think it's understandable that attention to detail and commitment to the world and core concept of your game are what really drive home a good game. You can have the best idea ever, and I've seen so many indie games that have got me so excited because the core concept, the world, the story that they have is amazing. It is just unfathomably good, and then they ruin it and destroy it because they don't have attention to detail, they don't flesh out the world enough and give it the time it needs to breathe on screen, just like a movie, right? On the other hand, making video games is hard. It takes time, but if you have a great idea and don't fully flesh it out for people to be able to enjoy and experience and nose their way through the beautiful idea for a game you had, then what's the point? You have a really good idea that you botched and it's just not going to be what you want it to be. Taking the time, especially for indie games where it takes years of development from smaller teams to create a beautiful product, is something that's going to, one, make them money, but two, be really fun. And it's part of the reason why indie games today can be so good, because all you need is a good idea and you put in a lot of time and a lot of effort into that game and it can be amazing. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from getting up there and fighting with AAA developers if you have a good enough idea and are willing to learn new things and put in the time to develop it. Noita is a perfect example of all of this done right. It has its core concept, which is an RPG game like Powder Toy, where every pixel is simulated to be something, whether it's an ice pixel or a fire pixel or a smoke pixel or whatever. They're all simulated and doing their own physics stuff, and you're playing an RPG game in that, and there's alchemy and crazy lore and stuff, right? But they could have just said, okay, here's an RPG game where every pixel is simulated, and then you just play, and you fight monsters, and you pick up new weapons, and you fight monsters, and you go on. And you fight more monsters, and then you fight bigger monsters, and you get better weapons, etc., 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 right? That's not what they did. They said, this is unique, we're going to flesh this out and make it something beautiful. They have a very crazy storyline with some of the story elements only being solved recently by the entire community via crazy ciphers and, storylines with the gods and stuff in the game. And, in addition to that, any corner you stick your nose in the game, you'll either learn something new or find something interesting. Pretty much everywhere you go is something interesting. It's not just plain pixels. And so having a lived-in full world with the mechanics that they wanted to make a game about makes the game beautiful. It's not bare bones it's not a bare bones showcase of the mechanic. It is a lived in world where you get to experience the mechanic in a whole plethora of situations. And that's what you need to experience to be able to rightly have a conversation and enjoyable, immersive time playing the game, right? It goes for any game. All right, less broad overview stuff now. This is going to be your Noita spoilers finally. Um, how does Noita keep player engagement so well? What about Noita makes people want to come back and feel so engaged by it, right? The big secret is that it's more than one game. So you start the game and you're playing the RPG. You are doing a dungeon crawling game, killing monsters, collecting gold, acquiring loot, doing your thing. And then you get down to a safe zone. And then now you're in creative mode, right? And a lot of times your deaths can come from experimenting with spells here in creative mode. So you have to be careful and think through it. And you're just trying to design a wand that does something cool or does something beneficial, a digging wand, a wand to teleport you fast, a wand to do a bunch of damage, right? And so you're looking at all the spells you have available, looking at the things you can purchase, and trying to craft stuff. If you find something new that you haven't seen before, you get to experiment with it and probably kill yourself with it once or twice, right? But so you play the RPG game, and while you're playing the dungeon crawler, you're like, okay, if I can get past this dungeon crawler section, I'll get to the creative section. Oh, I have the spell. I can't wait to use that, right? So you're looking forward to playing a different game, a different vibe, a different section of the world, right? So you continue to do that, you continue to do that, and then by the time you eventually manage to beat a run, beat the game, I guess after the first time you beat the game, because your run's over the first time, but anyways, you are now in an exploration game, because the objective at this point is to find orbs, explore new stuff, unlock new stuff, and see the sights of the world. There's places that you can't go until you have adequate power and ability to break the game in certain ways. And that's the next topic, but really it transforms into a third game, which is an exploration game. So instead of being fed down the track of the dungeon crawler and having those dungeon crawler and then creative sections, you're now in an exploration game. You can go anywhere you want. You have the power and the ability, usually before the end of the game, to go where you please, decide where you want to go. There's a whole overworld to explore with different areas. There's a bajillion different bosses and crazy Easter eggs and ciphers and books to find and things to see across the whole world. So it turns into an exploration game of where you want to go and what you can discover. And once you've seen that or seen a video of somebody doing that, not only are you excited for the switching game mode between the dungeon crawler and the creative game, but then now you're also working toward the exploration game. Oh, if I can get that spell or a way to do this, then I can go here or kill this guy or unlock this or whatever it is, right? But there's new objectives and you start to write your own story and the game opens up a lot. And so you're constantly working to a new game mode, a new vibe, a new play, a new game, right? So you're constantly working toward another game, and that's what keeps you engaged. You're looking forward to something else. There's a paradigm shift, if you will, coming up later, and it's already pre-planned. Obviously, you do what you want, but there are other games that you're working toward while playing the game. Now we get to the expectation breaking. What is so mesmerizing about exploring and experimenting in the game? Obviously, it looks cool and you can do cool stuff and find cool stuff, right? But the beautiful thing is that from the moment you start playing, the game breaks your expectations, right? And the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what do I mean by that? Well, you start off and you're like, okay, I have to go into this cave. I go into the cave, I play the RPG game, the dungeon crawler game, that's a better term. I play the dungeon crawler, I die, I restart. Okay, well, what if I don't go in the cave? Bum, 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 right? And this carries on from that moment, from your second run, throughout the rest of the game. You don't go in the cave, so you go left. You discover the tree. You swim through the tree, you find weird lore. You climb up the bit of the tree you can, you find weird stuff, weird lore, weird stuff to experiment with immediately, right? Then later on you discover, oh, I can climb the mountain above me. You end up routinely using a spell on that to get free gold and free health from the top of the mountain, right? And so it opens that up. And if you want to, if you find a way to get over the tree or want to go right, eventually at some point you'll explore the overworld and realize there's a lot more going on than just that. And so that alone, the prospect of being able to go explore those things with better gear to actually be equipped for them is something to drive you forward from right there. But I digress. They're breaking your expectations. So you play the dungeon crawler and then you get to a safe zone and you're thinking, okay, this is a safe zone. I can't break anything. It's just the safe zone, right? Well, then you get a black hole spell and you're able to break it. And you might have to fight Steve, the god, but you just kick the statue at him after you die to him like 12 times. And you get good at kicking the statue and one-shotting him. And now that you have the black hole on a run, you've discovered that the safe zones are just part of the world. As long as you have the right equipment, you can just go around them or go past them or dig straight through them. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, right? And so now it gets bigger, like, oh, okay, so the safe zone's actually in a spot. I understand how it works a little bit. You might even see the teleportadium in the eye and understand that somehow the people that built them, or the beings that built the safe zones, what do you call them, the temples, are people that built the safe zones, designed the portals using alchemy, using the world themselves. And so, boom, look, we have more details. There's a lot of effort and thought that goes into fleshing out and explaining things with that environmental storytelling. Everything around you has its place and it should be there for good reason. That is good game design. So then you carry on, you play the game, and then you're like, okay, so it's just this one world. And there's several other breaks in what you think is, what's happening and your perception of the game and stuff. But again, eventually you get to the point where you say, okay, this is the world I'm in, and there's all this stuff to discover in the world. And then you realize you can go left or right a world into a new seed. I don't believe it's the same seed, but either way, there's a lot of stuff that respawns the same, and it's a whole new world. So imagine digging through the side of the map into another seed, into another run. So you can go to another run the same way you broke out of the safe zone and went to the next stage or went to the previous stage without going through portals or, doing it correctly. And so it breaks your expectations over and over again. And the wonder and excitement of not knowing when you're done breaking expectations is something beautiful. Somebody's first moment realizing, even if it's just looking it up over, like while they're trying to understand the game, I try to keep a lot of information for myself while I'm playing. I recommend not looking at the map or telling people not to look at the map until they beat it once, because it preserves some of that wonder. But realizing that there's other seeds to the side of your world and realizing how open everything is if you have the right spells is beautiful. I mean, people really enjoy that moment over and over again. It's one of the great things about Noita. You get to have that moment with the game, and it's a conversation with the creators. So breaking the player's expectations leaves them in wonder. And even if they have discovered everything, especially with how obscure some of the stuff is, they'll constantly be wondering. I recently heard that with some of the patches they're doing to fix some bugs and stuff, most of the dev team has split up and it's pretty much done, but they're doing some, somebody went back and they're doing some patches to fix some stuff. And I heard him say, I saw him type at some point, if he was able to go back and patch some stuff and like change a version of the game, he'd want to add a really obscure boss that like is so impossible to find that just almost nobody will ever see it. In some random corner in the bottom of like, the giant lake or whatever, just something. He didn't say that, but some really obscure boss that's almost impossible for anybody to find. Maybe it just has an absurdly low drop chance, and that stuff is there. Because eventually, over the years, someone is going to see and show off something that none of us knew about. And having little things like that to still have wonder and still enjoy the game is a beautiful thing. It gives it longevity, and it's not that much effort. But the really important thing is that attention to detail and breaking the player's expectations. As a developer, you need to have a conversation with them and really throw them for a ride. You're making the game and they're going to play it. That's the whole agreement. Before our closing remarks, I'd like to say that if you see the beauty in a fleshed out world where things are in a place for a reason and that really good environmental storytelling, I'd just like to say that Noita is in a list of a very few games that get that right. That every corner you look in, anywhere you go, is part of the world and made with love and with a purpose, right? Somebody sat there and asked, does this make sense to the story we're telling? And so Noita's on that list. The top of the list is a game called Outer Wilds, and then coming down from that, there's a lot of games like Road 96, Hollow Knight, and maybe even Soma that really nail that and do it well. So Noita comes around there about Soma, but if you're looking for some other games like that, I'd really recommend those games, and they're all indie games. They've taken a while to develop, but people put a lot of love and effort into them and have made something truly special. Honorable mentions go to Remnant from the Ashes and Hunt Showdown, but hopefully we'll see some different videos on those in the future when I have time. So, what does Noita tell us about designing a game? AAA and indie games alike need to pay attention to detail and ask important questions about the reality that they're designing, or it won't be as interesting to the player. Noita shows us the importance of switching things up on the player, and even does this in multiple ways. Giving players what are effectively new games to play inside of your video game will always make it more engaging, and have them coming back for more because they had to work to get to those other games. You have to switch the vibe up on them. Noita also switches things up on us by constantly breaking the player's expectations. No matter how big your game is, it feels stagnant if the player is shown everything right from the get-go. Instead, give them a piece, let them master it, and then reveal that the world is bigger or more complex than they initially thought. Stay true to your core concept and don't half-ass your showing of it. It deserves better than that. Overall, Noita is another testament to the beauty of good game design done right. Thank you to anyone that made it this far in the video. It is for the reason of good game concepts executed poorly that I want to have a small community of people to be able to play some games that have gotten better or still have a great concept to explore, but don't have a player base anymore, and I need a group of people to be able to experience these games. If you liked anything I said or want to tell me anything, then go to the comments, slap the subscribe button, do the stuff. It's awkward, so I won't say any more than that. But I love you boys, and I hope you're having a good day. Goodbye. Oh, that's the, I just lightning myself into the fucking, it increased the knockback, which I should have saw coming, but really wasn't the best.